Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Minnesota House District 54B Candidates Forum, sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Tonight we are gathered at River Valley Church. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I will serve as moderator. All candidates for Minnesota House District 54B were invited to participate. With us this evening are Ben Bakeberg and Brendan Van Alstyne. The candidates are arranged in alphabetical order. Candidates have already recorded video interviews to introduce themselves to the community, and you can see those online, so the candidates will not make opening statements this evening. I encourage you to watch the videos on the Shakopee Chamber website. Tonight, candidates will be asked a series of questions, and they will have 60 seconds to answer. They also will have 4 opportunities to make rebuttal comments for 30 seconds. After they've used up all 4 of their rebuttal cards, they may still reply to the previous comments as part of their following answer. The first question tonight will be directed to Mr. Bakeberg. What is the role of state government?
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event. Thank you for all of you for coming. It's a little lighter crowd right now all of a sudden. And I'd like to thank Mr. Van Alstyne for coming as well and just for running. I'm new to this and it's an interesting venture running for office, so kudos to you. The role of state government, simply put, is to remove the obstacles that get in the way of people thriving and living the life that they so choose. And state government's role to do that is, number one, first and foremost, to keep us safe, to have economic policies in place that promote growth, and then provide a quality education for our students or for our communities. But ultimately, my role is to be a voice for the people that I serve.
And Mr. Van Alstyne, what is the role of state government?
Yes. Well, I suppose I should also thank the Chamber for hosting this, my opponent as well, for being a good and reasonable person who I hope will be a good representative of the people, as I hope to be. And to answer your question, I believe that the role of the government is to remove the barriers, to exercise the will of the people, to listen to the people, and to make sure that we are doing the things that the people come to us and ask us to do, and when they ask us for them to help them, for us to help them, that we do that help in the way that they ask us to do it.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what makes an effective legislator?
I think what makes an effective legislator is listening to the people, is going out, having conversations, attending meetings, figuring out what the problems are in the community, and just simply listening, and then going into the legislature and voting according to the things that you have learned while listening.
Mr. Bakeberg, what do you believe makes an effective legislator?
Yeah, I believe an effective legislator is the same qualities that make an effective leader. For 21 years, I've served I've been in education and have been in a principal for 15 years of that time. And I have been described as having a collaborative servant leadership mindset. It really comes from just my worldview on how I approach things. I believe that we need to serve people. We need to work together to come to solutions. And over my entire career, I found that I often come to the best solutions when I sit down and I talk with different people and share different ideas. And oftentimes there's a lot of refining within that. And I learn, but I also, my personality is I'm not going to back down from my core convictions and what I believe. So I believe that to be an effective legislator, you have to work collaboratively. And you have to serve the people that you have the pleasure to represent.
Mr. Bakeberg, what have been your greatest accomplishments during your career?
Yeah, I'm proud of my professional career. I think just recently, the last couple of years coming through COVID, and I talked about it at the endorsing convention, I'm very proud of the work that we did as a school district. Where I work, coming through COVID, we made it a priority to make sure that we had our K-6 students on site every single day. and we rolled up our sleeves and we figured out a way to do it. And the learning loss that is talked about at the state level, we did not see that in our school district because we did the hard work, we took risks, and we did what was best for our local community. So I think I'm proud of that, and I'm also proud of the culture that I've created in my building. It's taken time to get people in the right seat on the bus, but I'm very proud of the student-centered culture that we have in my building.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what have been your greatest accomplishments during your career?
Well, my career has been the illustrious job of a union mechanic at a factory, so it's not particularly exciting. I do remember when I first started working, I felt that I was extremely underqualified and that I had a lot of imposter syndrome. And to me, I think the best part of that career arc, as it were, is the perseverance. The fact that I kept going at it every day, trying my absolute best to learn everything that I could and to be the best mechanic that I could be. And I hope that, well, I know that I will bring that to the legislature, and I will try my best to learn as much as I possibly can and to listen. And yeah.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what is your strategy to engage with constituents on a regular basis?
Well, as I mentioned in a previous statement, I think that the best way to do that is to go to meetings. I think my favorite part of campaigning, actually, is the endless emails that I get from people inviting me to forums on mental health and climate change and universal health care, attending those, listening to what people have to say, and sometimes speaking my own ideas if it's relevant, and then going out and knocking on doors and going to town hall meetings and shaking hands and talking to actual people, I think is the best way to do that.
Mr. Bakeberg, what is your strategy to engage with constituents on a regular basis?
I think one of the most important things is just to be visible. You need to be out and about, and you need to talk with people. So whether it's at a Friday night football game or whether it's a food truck festival in a community or the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, it's just being out and about and talking to people and hearing what people have to say. And then it's just being responsive to people's needs. I talked with a couple out in the lobby, and they are still hedging on whether or not they're going to vote for me. But they brought a concern up to me, and I was responsive and answered their email. And I spoke to them like I would speak to anyone. And that's the way that I would approach things. And I would apply my 24-hour rule whenever possible that I have for myself as a professional, that as a principal, I have to respond to parents within 24 hours. Might be a different level of emails at the legislature, though.
Mr. Bakeberg, what are the most important issues that you would like to address in the next legislative session?
Well, I think public safety is first and foremost. We have got to get back to a place where our communities are safe. So that's the first and foremost. We have to address public safety. And then the second thing is we need to pass historic tax reform. In Minnesota, we are one of the highest taxed states in the country. So we need to pass historic tax reform to loosen the grip for our entrepreneurs to be able to take off. So historic tax relief, we need to invest in public safety and get our law enforcement to be back to where they are respected. And then these are kind of niche things from an education standpoint, but I think we need to address truancy reform. And that sounds kind of weird, but if kids are in school getting an education, they're not on the street causing problems and committing crime. So those would be my priorities.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what are the most important issues that you would like to address this next legislative session?
Well, by far the most important issue to me is campaign finance reform. I think that the power of dark money, of lobbyists, of PACs and other special interest groups on our legislature prevents our government from being able to do anything actually beneficial to the people. I think that no matter what it is that you care about, be it climate change, healthcare, education, if we don't do something about campaign finance laws the way that they are, then it doesn't matter what you want. our legislature isn't going to do anything about it. So that is my primary goal while in office.
Mr. Van Alstyne, when considering an important issue, how would you resolve any differences between your personal views and the opinion of a majority of your constituents or the position of your party?
The position of my party doesn't matter to me. The majority of my constituents come first. That's the whole point of being a public servant. That's the point of getting elected, is to do what your people ask you to do. So I believe that I will have the wherewithal required to put aside my own personal views and do what my people ask me to do.
And Mr. Bakeberg, when you consider an important issue, how would you resolve any differences between your personal views and the opinion of a majority of your constituents or the position of your party?
I think that's a great question. And when I think about just my professional journey, I'm a conservative, a proud conservative working in public education. I have experience in private schools as well. But that time has equipped me to be able to look at my own views and my own perspectives on things, and really ask the question of, is this one of my biases, or one of the things that is a personal thing, or is it something that is good for our school community, even though I may not technically agree with it. So, and I think that was highlighted throughout COVID. There were many things forced on us, and we as a school district stood up and fought for what was best for our community. But there were times that the reality that of a shutdown just happened. So that would be how I would balance things, is the similar thing that I do as a building principal.
Mr. Bakeberg, how should the legislature respond to the state budget surplus next year?
I touched on that a little bit. I think the first thing we need to do is pass historic tax reform. We talked about Minnesota being one of the highest tax states in the nation. Over and over again, I hear from business owners how that's impacting their ability to do business. So that's the first thing that we would need to do. And then the second thing, we need to get the 169-282 interchange project over the finish line in Jordan. That's not only a Jordan issue, that's a Scott County and the state of Minnesota issue. So we've got to get that done.
Mr. Van Alstyne, how should the legislature respond to the state budget surplus next year?
Well, I believe that I responded to this in a recent op-ed that I wrote for the Shakopee Valley News. And my response there is the same as I'll give here, which is that in many countries, states, and cities across the world, they have a tradition of holding a referendum where they give the people the ability to list the priorities that they want to see the budget go towards. They give the people the power to choose what their tax dollars actually go to. And that, I think, is the best way to handle this budget surplus, because frankly, it's not the legislature's money, it's your money. And with so many great things that we could do with it, I think that it's more than just us who should be saying what we should be doing with it. I think it's you guys. That's all.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what is your view of Minnesota's economy and business competitiveness?
That's a tough question. I will grant you that one. I believe that our small businesses are the backbone of our economy. I think that there's a lot of anti-competitive practices that we see coming from major corporations like, Amazon. We have one here in Shakopee. That's not our jurisdiction per se, but when multi-billion-dollar corporations are able to pay their employees so little money that they can't afford rent on their own, that they can't afford food or to get a new car if they get into a car accident, they don't provide them with health care, then it's very, very difficult for small businesses to be able to keep up and compete. So I think that the best thing we can do is to try to take power away from these multi-billion-dollar corporations and distribute that to the people and to strengthen our small businesses.
Mr. Bakeberg, what is your view of Minnesota's economy and business competitiveness?
I would agree with Mr. Van Alstyne that our small businesses are the backbone of our economy. When I'm out door knocking and talking with business owners, I hear repeatedly about the struggles that they're facing, and it really goes back to taxes. We need to work to reduce reduce our taxes so that our businesses can thrive. I was recently at a manufacturing event, and one of the people I was talking to was talking about his previous company left Minnesota because of the tax climate and because it wasn't friendly to do business in Minnesota. So we have to get back to where we're attracting businesses. But he also, this individual also said that the workforce in Minnesota, the people of Minnesota are amazing. So they are investing their new company in Minnesota into new processes, new facilities, because the workforce is so strong. And I just imagine if we coupled our workforce with a business-friendly tax environment.
Mr. Bakeberg, Minnesota's corporate income tax rate is the third highest in the nation, and Minnesota's top individual income tax rate is the sixth highest in the nation. Would you support lowering Minnesota's corporate and/or individual income tax rates?
I would, and simply put, there's $12 billion surplus is reason why we need to do that. And I think it would get to a point where we're attracting businesses, and then we would be able to tap into our amazing workforce, the people of Minnesota, and that business-friendly environment. So I believe I would do that, support that.
Mr. Van Alstyne, Minnesota's corporate income tax rate is the third highest in the nation, and Minnesota's top individual income tax rate is the sixth highest in the nation. Would you support lowering Minnesota's corporate and/or individual income tax rates?
I would not support lowering the top income tax rates for the reason that when those at the top are paying their fair share, it makes everything better for all of us. Though the top corporations, they're benefiting from our infrastructure. Companies like Amazon, their trucks are on our roads that we're paying for with our taxes. They're benefiting from our education when we pay to put people through school, to put people through higher education. These corporations are the ones that benefit from that, and those who control them are the ones who benefit from that. So I believe that making sure that everyone is paying their fair share is central to making sure that we have an equitable economy.
Mr. Van Alstyne, for the last several years, there have been proposals at the Minnesota legislature to mandate paid leave and other workplace benefits. Do you believe that the state should determine private sector workplace benefits, and why or why not?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. Do you believe that the state of Minnesota should determine private sector workplace benefits, such as paid leave, and why or why not?
I believe that to an extent that it should. It's difficult for small businesses to compete with big businesses, as I have said, and when the legislature sets a standard across the board that all companies have to abide by, then that makes it much easier for small businesses to compete. To a certain extent, it's a big expense for them. So I think there is a holistic approach you can take with subsidies and other benefits for small businesses to make sure that they can afford paying these benefits to their employees. But ultimately, I think that they should because of the fact that it helps make the economy more equitable.
Mr. Bakeberg, for the last several years, there have been proposals at the Minnesota legislature to mandate paid leave and other workplace benefits. Do you believe that the state should determine private sector workplace benefits, and why or why not?
I have a number of good friends that are small, medium, and large business owners, and over again, as I'm talking with them or talking with people at the doors that are business owners, any mandate from the government is not helpful to business. So, Mr. Van Alstyne talked about just small business being the backbone of our economy. If we mandate paid family leave, what I keep hearing from my constituents is that will crush our small businesses. So I wouldn't, I would not support something like that.
Mr. Bakeberg, what are the top issues regarding policing and public safety, and what reforms would you support?
It's a fantastic question. We have to get back to a place where where our law enforcement, where we're supporting our law enforcement. And to me, supporting our law enforcement really is twofold. The first thing is we need to hold people accountable when they're committing crimes. So when we have repeat and violent offenders, they have to be held accountable. And then when our judges and prosecutors don't follow through and follow minimum sentencing guidelines, we need transparency, and those judges and prosecutors need to be held accountable. In the interview, I talked about, he actually was a former student of mine that is now a police officer, and he shared just the frustration of arresting someone on his shift on one night and then arresting that same person for the same crime the next night. That's so demoralizing to our law enforcement. We have to stop that. Then we need to incentivize our law enforcement, and we need to make sure that we're supporting them and giving them what they need so that they can come out, they can go out, keep us safe, and go home to their families.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what are the top issues regarding policing and public safety, and what reforms do you support?
I agree that we definitely need to support our law enforcement. I think that the approach that we should take is to recognize the fact that we are treating law enforcement as though they are the just go-to people that we send to any issue that we have to deal with. I was just in a meeting a couple days ago about mental health services, and they had I believe it was the sheriff of Prior Lake there, asking for us to provide them with mental health personnel so that they can go and take some of these calls that the police are otherwise being asked to go to, and so they can deal with people appropriately and not have to worry about public backlash, not have to worry about potential violence because they are underqualified to deal with it.
Mr. Van Alstyne, should the laws regarding the purchase of firearms be changed? And if so, what changes are needed?
Well, I believe that the state legislature has no authority to outright ban guns, seeing as it's protected by the Constitution. But I believe that the issue and the argument surrounds our desire to make sure that guns are only in the hands of the good guys and that we keep them out of the hands of the bad guys. And I would support any legislation such as red flag laws, gun tracking laws, that makes sure that we are only allowing people who are totally qualified and that we can trust to be safe with firearms, that only they are able to purchase firearms.
Mr. Bakeberg, should laws regarding the purchase of firearms be changed? And if so, what changes are needed?
So I think we all can agree, and the thing that Mr. Van Alstyne and I would agree on is that we want kids to be safe, specifically in schools. And in some of the previous debates, they've talked about school safety. And to be blunt, I don't think there's anyone that knows school safety better than I do in this race. Each and every day, I go to school to make sure that the kids, the just under 600 kids, are safe in my building. And there are multiple reports that you can go to that the number one factor in keeping kids safe in school and in the community is a relationship. So we have to get to a place where we're talking about how do we invest in relationships and getting kids connected, not only within their school, but in their community, whether it's their church. But I don't believe that passing all kinds of gun laws are going to address those relationship issues that need to be addressed, because many of the kids are struggling with significant mental health issues that will begin to be addressed through strong relationships.
Mr. Bakeberg, what is your position regarding abortion, and in what circumstances should abortion be allowed or prohibited in Minnesota?
Yeah, you can look at my website. I'm unashamedly pro-life. I'm proud of my pro-life stance. First and foremost, we have to start that anyone in the situation of considering an abortion, we have to lead with empathy and care for that person and the situation. But the reality in Minnesota, it's a constitutional right up until birth. And I would rather spend our time talking about things that I can have a direct impact on when I get to the legislature: the economy, public safety, and education and crime.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what is your position regarding abortion, and in what circumstances should abortion be allowed or prohibited in Minnesota?
Well, I would consider myself to be pro-choice. I believe that, fundamentally it's a healthcare decision, and therefore it should be made between people and their doctors. And I don't think that the state or elected officials or bureaucrats should have any say in that decision. I think that fundamentally, to me, what's frustrating about the abortion argument is the fact that we don't talk about contraceptives, we don't talk about preventing the pregnancy to begin with. I think that if what our desire is to stop terminating unwanted pregnancies, then we should focus on legislation around preventing unwanted pregnancies from happening to begin with. That happens through education, and that happens through total access to contraceptives.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what is the best way to make healthcare affordable and available to more Minnesotans?
Quite frankly, universal healthcare. The United States pays twice as much as any other country in the world. I think the second most, I just had an excellent conversation with Dr. Mark Brockie, who is the chair of Healthcare for All MN, and he was talking to me about all these issues for a good long time. The second most expensive healthcare in the world is $8,000 per person on average. In the United States, we pay $16,000 per person on average, and you are still flipping a coin on whether or not you are able to get coverage from your insurance. You are still flipping a coin on whether or not any job that you go work is even going to provide health insurance. That is a problem, and that is one of my top issues, and it is very easily solved through universal healthcare policy.
Mr. Bakeberg, what is the best way to make healthcare affordable and available to more Minnesotans?
Well, I think if Mr. Van Alstyne or I had the simple answer to that, we could coin it and package it and sell it and make a lot more money than we'll make at the Capitol. So I think we start with that it's a very complex issue for healthcare. But as I'm out talking to people at the doors and talking about healthcare, over and over I'm hearing that many people are working just simply to pay for their health insurance. I had one lady tell me that her check was right around $1 when she went home at the end of the 2 weeks. So I think we have to create greater choice and greater transparency, because I believe that will help us be able to address the costs.
Mr. Bakeberg, do you believe that the state should address climate change? And if so, what measures would you support?
I think first and foremost, we all want clean water, we all want clean air, but I don't think it's the state's job to mandate things like the emissions guideline coming from California. It is mind-boggling to me that an unelected board in California can make a decision, and then that impacts the dealerships in Jordan selling cars, that they will be able to have a limit on that. So where we have to be wise, I don't believe that it is our role to be mandating things from the state government around climate.
Mr. Van Alstyne, do you believe that state government should address climate change? And if so, what measures would you support?
Absolutely. Given my age, my generation and the coming generations are going to suffer greatly because of the effects of climate change. No matter how drastic our measures are to deal with it at this point, it's too late. We are going to suffer negative effects from it. We are already suffering negative effects for it. And it is absurd to me to think that we are willing to do anything less than everything necessary to prevent climate change from taking the toll that we know that it's going to take. I think that at the state level, the best things that we can do are, transferring our energy creation system away from coal, banning the creation of new dirty power plants, investing at the state level into green energy power, investing in micro-generation, where individuals and farmers are able to put solar panels and windmills on their own property to generate their own electricity, and to give tax rebates for new and used electric vehicles, as well as expanding electric vehicle infrastructure.
If I could just do a rebuttal more of a comment. I was recently on a call with talking about mining in northern Minnesota, and Mr. Van Alstyne brings up electric cars, and there's a place for that, but the reality of it is the Twin Metal Mines has been on hold for years, and in order to generate the batteries, the mineral, we need to mine those minerals to do that. So I think we need to to really look at and give Twin Metals the opportunity to go through the permitting process. They haven't even been given that opportunity, and then we could have that conversation.
I'll also use my rebuttal card now that the seal's been broken. I remember at the Democratic State Convention that the the metals mining up on the North Shore area was a big issue of contention, and I think there was frankly a bit of confusion around it, but they did decide that they want to allow the mining to take place because of the fact that it is, vital for getting electric vehicles to be viable. And personally, it's a complicated issue. I would want to make sure that the environment is being protected while we do it. But yes, I think that economic expansion in that area for green energy is important.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what changes are needed in state support for post-secondary education?
So my personal story is that I couldn't afford to go to college. My parents were middle class, so they were too poor to afford to send me to college, and the state wasn't willing to give me any benefits to help me go to college myself. So instead, I went out to Utah and took an excellent, the word has just slipped my mind. I went to a technical college, Davis Tech. It was short, cheap. It was funded by the businesses in Utah. They gave out scholarships for students going into automation robotics, which is what I went into. And that has provided me with more stability than I have seen any of my peers get. Every single person who's gone to a four-year college is, frankly, living a worse life than I am. They are deep in debt. They have difficulty paying their bills or finding meaningful jobs in the fields that they went and got educated in. So I think that the best thing we can do is expand our technical college infrastructure in this state.
Mr. Bakeberg, what changes are needed in state support for post-secondary education?
Excuse me, my daughter is in college, and my wife and I are experiencing firsthand the cost, and it's pretty amazing. But we were also blessed that my daughter was able to go into college with a significant number of of college credits. So she had the opportunity through her high school to do that. And I believe we need to expand our pathways, not just to four-year college in the schools, but we have to move into trade schools and bring those trade school programs right into our high schools to give kids the opportunity. And then we also need to create pathways for kids that don't have a desire to go to college or even a trade school, that want to go right into the workforce and be able to learn on the job so that they're not saddled with mountains of debt. And I believe that we've done that in the district that I'm in. There's models across Minnesota that are working really well, that are helping kids move forward.
Mr. Bakeberg, what is the most significant transportation issue in District 54B, and how should that be addressed at the state level?
I've already mentioned it, but it's the 169-282 interchange project in Jordan. Tuesday night, we just had a forum where they had 4 different models that they were talking about, and we need to get that project done. There's a funding shortfall, about $12 million, and we need to make sure that gets across the finish line, because that is a linchpin for economic development, not only in the Jordan area, but in Scott County.
Mr. Van Alstyne, what do you view as the most significant transportation issue for District 54B, and how should that be addressed at the state level?
To be honest, I'm not the most well-versed in this particular field. I do know a little bit about the interchange that Bakeberg's talking about, and personally, the concerns that I have with with transportation are the universal access to transportation, our funding of public transit, making sure that everyone is able to have adequate access to economic opportunity, which is only available through transportation in this country. So, I do believe that making sure that infrastructure project is pushed through and completed. I would be more focused on making sure that we fund our public transportation system and give access to underserved communities.
Mr. Van Alstyne, do you support the legalization of marijuana, and why or why not?
Absolutely. I think that the criminalization of marijuana has led to, I think that it's a big part of the reason why we have so much distrust with our police forces these days. I think that a lot of the problems we see in law enforcement stem from just a total lack of trust. And I think that if we legalize marijuana, if we expunge the records of people who have been criminalized with nonviolent drug-related charges, then I think that would do tremendous work for rebuilding trust and for helping people get back to being active in the community, to being active workers and community members.
Mr. Bakeberg, do you support the legalization of marijuana, and why or why not?
So my role as a building principal, I've seen firsthand just the impact of students, just that incremental use of whether it is vaping into marijuana and then into harder drugs. So I really struggle with opening that door without having just significant safeguards in place for our kids. And then also there's a huge public safety issue with the legalization of marijuana. So without those two things, making sure that we have some significant safety safeguards in place and making sure that our kids are safe, I wouldn't support something like that.
Mr. Bakeberg, do you support the legalization of sports betting?
Can I use my rebuttal card here?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So as far as the access that children have to marijuana when it is legalized, the studies that have come out of the states that have legalized it, I think, have pretty universally shown that it is harder for children to get access to it, because when the only way to access illegal drugs is illegally, then, the dealers aren't going to have as much discrepancy on who they're selling to. It's just as illegal to sell to a child as it is to sell to an adult. But when it is legalized, when it requires licensing and all sorts of government inspections to be able to sell marijuana, A, that pushes out the illegal dealers, and B, no one's going to want to sell to children because it's illegal.
Mr. Bakeberg.
That very, very same argument was said multiple times to me about vaping. And I can show you a drawer full of vapes that have both nicotine and THC in them in my office. So that's just not my lived experience.
Mr. Bakeberg, do you support the legalization of sports betting, and why or why not?
Yeah, that's another complex issue. On one hand, there are people that struggle with gaming and addiction and just that avenue getting into kids. So I have significant concerns about that. But on the flip side, I believe that I should be able to live the life the way that I choose to live. And if I want to choose to spend my money on sports betting, then I should be able to do that. So the commitment that I can make to this is that I'm going to balance those two factors as we move forward in that conversation.
Mr. Van Alstyne, do you support the legalization of sports betting, and why or why not?
Well, I definitely have to agree that I don't think that the government's job is to moralize to us and tell us how to live our lives. So I would be in support of legalizing it. My personal main hang-up is the fact that the way that we handle betting currently is, we let the indigenous communities benefit from it. We let them run it. And, that is the result of the exploitation that they've faced and the genocide, all that. So for me, what I would want to do is make sure that sports betting stays in the hands of indigenous communities so that they continue to benefit from those gambling practices.
Our time is running out. Anyone whose questions have not been answered should ask the candidates this evening after this debate or contact their campaign offices. You can find more information about the candidates at the Chamber's website, shakopee.org. Each candidate will now have 1 minute for their closing statement. We'll begin with Ben Bakeberg.
All right. Well, I'd like to end by saying thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to Mr. Van Alstyne. Thank you to all of you for coming and hanging around. Every morning I get up with the mindset of going to school and serving the kids, the families, and the students, and the community and my staff. And that's the approach that I've taken each and every day, and that's the approach that I would take if given the opportunity to serve in the legislature. In St. Paul, I'd focus on public safety. I'd focus on taxes. But I think I bring a unique perspective as a current principal that's working with kids on a daily basis that is quite frankly missing at the Capitol. And I got involved in this because over and over again, policies or laws are being pushed on schools that are just ravaging our kids and ravaging our families. So I'm running to be a voice for kids, for families, and our communities, and that's where our motto of strong families, strong communities, and strong schools come from. Thank you. I'm Ben Bakeberg, and I appreciate your support.
And we'll close with Brendan Van Alstyne.
Well, thank you very much, the Chamber, for hosting this. Thank you to my opponent, Ben. I'm very grateful that we do not have a mudslinging contest up here like our previous counterparts on the A side of this district. I think, to me, the reason why I wanted to run for office is the fact that America was founded on a very simple idea of giving power to the people. We came from a system of monarchies and landed elites that controlled everything, and people got so fed up with not having any power in their lives that they created America. And that was so successful that there are now countless democracies around the world. But what I think that most of the problems in this country boil down to is the fact that the people's power is being chipped away at endlessly. And my goal as a legislature is to reinforce the people's power, to prevent those special interests, those at the upper echelons of government and in business, from controlling absolutely everything. Thank you very much.
As we close this part of our discussion, please remember that the views expressed in tonight's debate are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community and has gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide the information that you need to make informed choices when you vote. Thank you to the audience this evening and to River Valley Church for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, thank you to all the candidates. We appreciate your time and your willingness to serve our community. I'm also pleased to announce an additional forum. On October 13th, the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce will host a forum with the candidates running for Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District, U.S. Representative Angie Craig and Tyler Kistner. The Shakopee Chamber of Commerce is a partner for that event, and more information is available on the website at shakopee.org. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Please remember to vote.